just wanted to do a video to discuss my feelings about what's happened in the press recently regarding the Michael Jackson documentary that's come out. One of the things that I'd like to make clear before I start this is I am not psychic and I cannot travel back in time. So this is not about me saying Michael Jackson is definitely a molester and paedophile. Likewise, I can't say whether the young men who have told their story are telling the truth or not. That's not for me to judge. That's something completely separate to what I want to discuss today. But what it's really brought up for me is the way that we struggle to understand sexual abuse of children. We really do. Because one of the things that I'm hearing time and time again on social media is this idea that, first of all, the boys who have grown into men would have discussed the fact that they'd been abused earlier, that they would have never denied that abuse would have happened when they had the chance, if it had actually occurred, that they would have essentially never been positive about this man who essentially could have been a person who really did cause them an insurmountable and long-lasting period of pain that will last them a lifetime. Because that's such a myth. There's this myth that is peddled that paedophiles and child molesters are evil individuals who hang around schools and you would know if you saw them that they were a little bit strange. That comfortable idea that we have in our brains, that comfortable idea that we would be able to distinguish the type of person that would abuse a child, is because we don't want to believe that our parents or our friends or our neighbours or our school teachers or our scoutmasters or our priests, that they could be people who could do our children harm. And what we like to believe is that there is this very clear distinction between what we think is good and what we think is evil. And unfortunately, that just isn't the case. Children love their child abusers. They are loyal to their child abusers. They are individuals who have great relationships with these people who 9 out of 10 times are treating them with respect and care and love, and 1 out of 10 times are sexually molesting them. Imagine that, a 90% time spent with this person where you might feel the most important individual in their world, the most loved. You might stand out in that place with that person more than you've ever stood out anywhere. They might reward you, they might give you gifts, they might encourage you in all different activities, they might tell you that you're the most important, intelligent, brilliant, beautiful human they've ever met. And you're telling me that that means that they would speak out against that person, that they would, as a child, be willing to remove the one person that might be giving them more than anybody else does in their world because they've been groomed, because they have absolutely bought into a belief that they are special because they've been told they are special. And you're telling me that you would question that child at that time breaching the loyalty that they have towards that human that they love. Because if you genuinely believe that children who are in relationships with paedophiles are actually aware that that's what's happening, you need to educate yourself. Children are innocent victims. They are preyed on by these molesters, but the truth is that those molesters are not, on the whole, aggressive, narcissistic, violent psychopaths who harm children in a way where that child would wish to speak out. The point of molestation is manipulating your prey into a position where they're rendered helpless, even where they collude with you. That's what being a very astute and manipulative molester is all about. And all I see at the moment in the press are people coming out and saying, if these boys really did get abused, then why didn't they do A, B, or C? Well, let me tell you, I've worked with abused kids since I began my career. Most of them, at some point, have spoken out about the abuse to someone, and it's either been such a terrible reaction that they've gained, that they've hidden, or they've been called a liar, so they've retracted, or they've been taken seriously. But during that position of being taken seriously, suddenly when the world changes and all these things like a parent being removed from the home and the mum or dad being really upset because of what's happened occurs, they see the absolute devastation and suddenly they don't want to do it anymore and they reel it back, and now they're a liar. they're a liar because they said somebody abused them, but they said that wasn't true in the end. So they're a liar. They weren't abused and then became fearful of the epicenter of that impact. No, they're now a liar. And so you see the perpetuation of children growing into adults and harming themselves and being silent and believing that they caused the issue. That's where it begins in childhood, when they collude with the abuse because they do not want to harm the person they love, even though that person is harming them. And every Twitter that I see, every comment on Facebook, every analogy in the press that talks about how he could not possibly be a child molester because he was talented and fabulous and kind and generous and charitable, and he had a really bad childhood, and that all might be true, but do not believe for 1 minute that molesters are individuals that you can categorize, or even more so that molesters are all bad. The thing about paedophilia that people don't understand, and this is something that is perpetuated constantly, there is not an open discussion about the disparity and differences between what paedophilia is and what child molestation is, and also the difference between what a molesting paedophile and a narcissistic psychopathic paedophile would be. It's huge. So let's just look at this as if we were on a spectrum. Here at the beginning of the spectrum we have paedophiles. A paedophile is an individual who has a predilection for the body of a child sexually. They want a relationship potentially with a child sexually. However, even though they have that incredible attraction and that drive and that compulsion that they would like to have a relationship with a child, they have what we understand a moral conscience, a code that says, I know that this is wrong, and therefore, in spite of my attraction, I will not go down that road. I will not look at child porn. I will not engage in relationships with children. I will not touch anybody else's child. They recognise that it is morally reprehensible and it prevents their behaviour. And then we move a little bit further down that spectrum, and this paedophile might be somebody who looks at child porn. Now at this point they become a child molester, because child porn, vicarious as it may be, is still child molestation, and it perpetuates the abuse of children everywhere. So at that point they are indeed a child molester, but they still may never engage in any form of relationship with a child because they'll believe that they're a step away. Yes, I am attracted to children. Yes, I want to have a sexual connection with children, but no, I don't want to be involved in harming them in a direct way, even though they are. They use that as a reasoning as to why they're allowed to see porn. Then we move down a little bit further, and it's the individual who is a paedophile but wants to have some kind of sexual relationship with a child. It may be their daughter, it may be their son, it may be a friend of the family, it may be somebody that they work with child, it may be a friend. All of these potentials, because there are children everywhere, and they can get into a situation where they have time with a child, but at this point they believe that they're loving. They believe that they care. They believe that they have a rationale for wanting a relationship with this child. This child likes me. They like spending time with me. They enjoy the presents that I buy them. And they create this idea in their brain that they are not a paedophile. They're not a child molester. They are a loving adult who wants to have a relationship sexually with this loving child. And they spend this amazing amount of time with them, and they connect with them, and they adore them, and they genuinely don't feel or want any harm to come to that child. But they're so deluded in that they feel that it's still acceptable for them to have a sexual relationship of some sorts with that child. Now we are at the point where we have an individual who is a child molester. They've gone further than thought. They've gone further and they've taken action. But still, imagine at that juncture, that person could also be working a fantastic job, be great friends with your parents or friends with your colleagues' parents. You know, they could be big part of your wider world. They could be a wonderful human being to all intents and purposes. They might be brilliant, but they also like abusing kids. Your kid, potentially. So you see, at that point, you can't see that individual. There isn't a sign on the head. They genuinely can be all these fantastic other things and still be a child abuser. And yes, then at the very end of the spectrum, we have what we would consider narcissistic, psychopathic, aggressive, psychopathic murderers who are paedophiles as well. And they are the ones that we read about on the news when horrible things happen to children. And of course, that level of psychopath and that level of molester, you may find out about it because it is so reprehensible. We hear about it on the news, or children are so damaged that when they're even not hurt in a way that means that they're killed, they still are brought to our attention because of the injuries that they sustain, for example. But if you're in that middle, if you are there, the chances are that you will be so confused, so ashamed, so completely perplexed with what is going on when your abuser is harming you, that it will take you half a lifetime before you even understand that it really occurred. And even then, imagine knowing that you had enjoyed sexual experiences with that individual. I mean, think about that. One of the hardest things that we have in therapeutic work with people who've been sexually abused is that the body and the brain are having two completely separate experiences. The body has erogenous zones that will feel nice even when we are sensing disgust in our brain. So even if we're being touched in a way that we don't enjoy, as in mentally, when we actually have the physical experience, it can still feel pleasurable. Imagine that. So now, wait a minute. I thought I was disgusted, but I do remember that I seem to enjoy that physical touch. Therefore, I must be responsible. Oh, I need to feel deep shame. I must not tell anybody, because if they find out that not only I was allowing this abuser to abuse me, I actually think I might have enjoyed elements of that. That must mean that I am as bad as them. And then imagine going through teenage angst and then listening to the things that I'm seeing in the press, where people are basically accusing those boys who've come forward as men of liars and saying how they have no right to tell their story, and completely and utterly representing and backing Michael Jackson, guilty or otherwise. They're doing it. What message is that giving to the kid at home today who's in that situation? So before you go online and you write something negative about people who are speaking out about child abuse, think, when you do that, you may believe that it's only reaching that person that you want to know about your opinion, but the truth is you'll be reaching so many others. The UK alone, 1 in 6 children will be abused sexually before their 16th birthday. 1 in 6. That's 1 in 4 girls, 1 in 8 boys. So if you're putting comments out there that seem to suggest that you support abusers or that you don't believe people who come out and talk about abuse, there will be 1 in 6 people in your world who you are affecting. Like I said, this isn't me saying that Michael Jackson is guilty or otherwise. On a personal level, I think it's insane that any parent would allow their child to spend a night in a bed with a man that they've known for a few days, who has no actual relationship with them, that they have no actual background with, but because he's a loaded billionaire or whatever and makes great music, that seems completely normal. No, it's not. That's about grooming an entire family. But hey, I don't know. Was he a crazy eccentric? Maybe. Was he a child molester? I'm going to say on an evidential level, it looks like probably he was, but I can't actually say. But what I can say is, don't believe in the myths of child abuse, because if you do, you believe in the problem and you become part of it.